And thank you. Good morning, Chicago. As Jerry said, I'm from New York City. So it's a little bit later in the morning and we got a nice day here, blue sky, a little chilly, but nice to be with you here this morning. As Jerry said, I'm a member of the New York City chapter. I actually gave this talk. I've given this talk a couple times. And it's a really easy talk for me to give because it's basically my story. And I didn't know it, of course, you don't know things at the time that you're going to do pivots in your career. But as I look back, that's actually what I did. And so I'm sure that there are lots of different ways that are successful for people in terms of making pivots. There's no one way, but I'm just going to share my story and share what worked for me. And maybe there'll be a tidbit or two or three that you can take away and utilize in your own search or in your career or something that you want to do forward. So first of all, let me just a bit of an introduction of myself. In addition to being from New York. So first of all, I'm a CPA. I went to college, I majored in accounting, I got my CPA, I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, then PricewaterhouseCoopers for a dozen years. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went there for a couple of years, I stayed for 12. And I worked in a variety of different industries. I loved the diversity, I loved traveling, I loved a whole lot of things about it, but I didn't like what I saw. It didn't seem to me that the partners were having so much fun, and I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So I left and I went to, so this is now transition number one. So very simply, an opportunity was offered to me and I took it. One of my clients was Deutsche Bank, Deutsche Asset Management. I was doing a lot of work in the financial services space. They had a role that they created a role they needed filled. And so next thing you know, I'm there for 12 years. But I had a lot of different roles at Deutsche Asset Management in operations, in process management, and process excellence, and in global business strategy. So those sort of became my things. You'll hear that like sort of throughout my talk is operations, process, and strategy. Those are my three things, my skills. Those are always like in the back of my mind. Okay, so through twists and turns of the market, through market crisis of 2008, all sorts of stuff, Deutsche Bank was, senior leadership was changing every 18 months. It got sort of irritating, developing the strategy, implementing the strategy, and then dismantling the business that I had just built. So I'd done that many times. And so finally, there was a swing of the management from New York to London. And I wish I had been younger, but I was at a point with my family that I couldn't go. So I decided to leave. And but I didn't want to go and do financial services just at another firm. I'm in New York. There's lots of firms that can go do the same thing someplace else. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something different. Okay, so now I'm on to transition number 2. And this is actually at the point that I joined the FANG. And I figured that I had skills and I just wanted to move into a different sector. I don't know what sector, but a different sector. I had something to offer. I don't know what, but I'll figure out what it is. And I'll tell you that story. What I ended up doing was I ended up moving into higher education. I went to work at Columbia University here in the city of New York. I happened to have also sat on the board of trustees at my undergraduate alma mater, Lehigh University. So I knew a bit about that. Again, I had expertise in operations, process, and strategy. I was a CPA. I could talk the talk. I could walk the walk. And yet I was a bit of an outsider. I was an outsider. But I went and got a role there. I'll tell you the story in a bit. As the CFO and chief of staff of all the student and administrative services for Columbia University. So think like housing, dining, registration, financial aid, all like a whole lot of student facing functions outside of the classroom. I was the CFO and chief of staff for all of that. for 5 years, and then I moved into Columbia Law School. Not a lawyer, but I moved into doing a similar role at Columbia Law School. And yet, what did I do? I went from large organization to large organization to large organization. All very large, complicated, global, matrixed, political organizations. And at the same time, I have a young family at home. And I'm knocking my head against the wall, trying to, just figure things out. It's sort of lonely at the top, as they say. And I thought, like, really, is this what I want to do? With, as many people say, like there are points, like there was an election that was going on that was crazy. There's I think there's a lot of different points in people's lives where you say to yourself, like, is this what I'm meant to do? And is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Or at least the rest of my career. Like, so I figured I had another 10 to 15 years left in my, of working life. And is this what I wanted to do? And the answer to that was no. I wasn't done yet. So now transition number 3. I wanted to do something that was meaningful. I wanted to work with smart people. I wanted the power to decide who I work with, when I work with them, on what issues I work with them. I wanted something that was flexible to meet the needs of my family. And so I started my own business. And my own business, as you'll see, I'm going to talk about is, so now I'm an executive coach, career coach. I work with business professionals and business owners on their professional performance. And I work with people that are in career transition or pivoting or helping them get clarity on what they need from their next role so that they can be happy for a long, long time. So I'm a business coach. FocalPoint is a global organization. If there's anybody on the call that is like interested in like what is, like, you all have, I assume, you're members of the FANG, so you have awesome financial experience, you have awesome skills, and if sort of giving back and sharing what you've learned in your careers with other people is something that's of interest to you, feel free to contact me. In fact, at some point here, I am going to, I don't know if I can do it now because I have lots of screen sharing, but I want to put my information in the chat. Okay, so I'd encourage you all to do that. Put your contact info, networking purposes in the chat. I will do the same at the end so that you can have my contact information and my website and how to reach me. So I'm going to stop right there just for a second because I see that there's something here in the chat. Okay, Matt says, type your background and how we can help you. Exactly what I was saying. Great minds, Matt. Okay, so that's my intro. That's my story. And so I'd like to get a sense from the people in the audience. Maybe you can just feel free to take yourself off mute or put it into the chat. Like, why are you here? What made you come today? Did you come today because you want to change to another industry? Did you come today because maybe you're in your role, but you're disengaged? Or maybe your job search isn't going so well, you're a little disengaged. I found that I was on my career path because of pay and title and not because it brought me happiness. I'm just going to check here and see if anybody has anything to say. So lots of different reasons why people are here. But I really believe that we don't have one true calling in our career. As you can see, I've done like all sorts of stuff. And I didn't start out at the beginning saying, oh, I think I'm going to in 35 years end up being a business coach. I don't know how that goes. And I think long gone are the days of people that have, started their careers on one company and stayed for 35 years. My father did. My father was started out as a as an accounts receivable clerk in a chemical company, and went through a lot of different promotions. And 35 years later, he retired as the CFO of that company. It had gone through some transactions, but I think those days are sort of gone. I mean, it still happens, but it's quite natural, I think, to make changes. So you don't have one true calling. You might have many. And I was asking myself, is this what I'm supposed to do? And if I was going to do something else, what was that going to be? Is it a different role? Is it a different sector? And how do I do that? So I wanted to, and you all may have your own stories, and I'd love to hear them, but I wanted to take my experience in operations, process, and strategy, and I wanted to move those into a new sector. And how was I going to do that? Well, the first thing I did was I joined the FANG. So you guys are already ahead of the game. Okay. But I had to really spend some time thinking about what is it that I want. So it's hard to go figure out, how do you go get it if you don't know what you want? So I call that having clarity. And by the way, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask me questions along the way, interrupt, or Matt's also keeping an eye on the chat for me. Matt, you can jump in and let me know if there are questions. But you really have to start this process of having clarity. You just can't sort of say, well, I think I'm going to go, get a job in another sector. Like, you really have to do some research. And so figuring out how and where to start is what I call the 3 Ps. And here we go. Key number 1 is purpose. And what is your purpose? What is your requirement? What is the job that's going to make you happy and persevere? What is the job that is going to be in line with your values? What captures your attention? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What excites you? What do you want your legacy to be? What lights your fire? So I certainly know that there was a lot of time where I was spending, there's always junk with every job, right? There's some stuff that's sort of yucky, right? And you learn that there's a piece of that. And how much of that can I tolerate? Okay. I think at least 75 or 80% of it should be really exciting, good, fun work for you. Something that you're passionate about. And if you're not, move on and find it. Find the next thing. So what lights your fire? The next P is, who are the people that you're working with? And if they don't share your values, and I was working with a bunch of jerks. I mean, I just didn't like the people that I worked with. They and individually nice people, but some of the culture, some of the way that people work together as a team, I just didn't really care for that. I wanted to work with people that I enjoy, and that people that I like, and people that bring the best out in me. And so the question is, how do you find them? And so what circle of people really jive with my ambition, my balance, my expertise, my priorities? So I don't want somebody just saying, really, you're going to go home because you want to play your kids play soccer? Like, that was important to me. I'm going to be at my kids' play. I'm going to be at our kids' soccer game, and I'm going to work hard. That doesn't mean that just because I might leave to go do something with my family doesn't mean I'm not getting my work done, because after they're asleep, I'm turning my computer back on. I'm doing what we need. I do what I need to do. Okay. And if the team or the environment doesn't allow for that, well, then I'll find one that will. Okay. And I think especially from COVID and this whole situation that we've been in for the past couple of years, people have gotten in touch with what's important to them. Okay. So don't give up on it just because the world is opening up and people are starting to take off their masks. Don't take them off too fast. There were 6 cases in my daughter's school yesterday. Just, think about like who you want to be and what sort of people you want to be working with. Okay. And then lastly is the pace that you want to be working with. You want to be finding your next role in a way that it fits with your values and personality. You want long-term happiness, right? And like, where are you in your career? Like, I'm not at a point in my career where I'm gonna, work a bazillion hours. I'm just not. But maybe you are. maybe you're still on the uptick, and you really want you can sleep when you're dead. I wanted a more relaxed and flexible schedule so that I could be available for my family and my personal relationships. So think about whether are you in the sprint stage of your career, or are you, sort of nearing the end of your marathon, and what will you need to level up your skills to move to the next place. Okay, so you have to know those 3 things. Okay, to have clarity on where it is that you're going to go. Okay, any questions so far on that? So it's hard to know where to go if you don't know where you are, what your likes and dislikes are. It's hard to know where you're going to go if you don't spend time defining that. Otherwise, you're all, sort of all over the place. Okay, so for me, my purpose was, I like helping people solve problems. I don't like to actually solve the problems myself. I like to help people. I like to help people develop strategy, figure out processes, and implement. And this is what I've done throughout my career. And now I do it with people. I do it with professionals. I do it with business owners. And I take my experiences that I had in public accounting, and that I had on Wall Street, and that I had in higher education, and I bring those to all the professionals that I work with. Okay, so I learned a lot during my career, and I deploy those learnings. I get to the people that I work with, I get to decide. I don't want to work with people that aren't going to do the work. So I work with motivated professionals that want to raise their game. Okay, if I don't like you, I'm not going to work with you. I mean, because that's what I left behind. I mean, it's, it sort of is what it is. People, I'm going to do a good job when I work with people that I like and I care for and that I share values with. Okay, so secondly, and third, I just said the pace, I wanted something that was flexible and that worked for me. Okay, so I defined what that was. And then the next thing, after I had my 3 Ps, is I'm going to start to figure out where and how I want to pivot. Okay, so the very first step is taking stock of your skills. You can take advantage of this crisis to take stock of your situation. Make a list of your core strengths. And by the way, I coach people on this. So if you don't know what your core strengths are, call me up. I'm going to give you my contact information at the end. Call me up and we'll talk. I do a variety of assessments with people. Everybody has core strengths. Okay, but take stock of your skills and how you might be able to use those in a new position. Do you need to fill in any gaps? Okay, so I said operations, process, strategy, that was my thing. And yet, in order for me to coach, I needed content and curriculum. I needed some help to be able to do that. So I knew what my gaps were and how I was going to solve for those gaps. Your gaps might be different. You might need to learn something else. You might need to take a class. You might need to read a book. You might have everything that you need, but whatever, you take stock of your skills. And then the next step is then create create a plan. Okay, so let me tell you about my plan. Let's see. So I was leaving Deutsche Bank, and I told you I just wanted to move into a different sector. I didn't want to be on Wall Street anymore. It was going to be the same thing with another bank. I just, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something else, but what was that going to be? Well, I really didn't know. So I like threes. Okay. So I picked 3 sectors, and I said, you know what, I'm going to just investigate 3 sectors and meet with as many people as I can in those 3 sectors and ask them a list of questions. Come up with my list of questions. Like, what skills do you need in that sector? Do my skills translate? How might I do a search? Who do I need to meet? Where do I fit? What does it pay? That sort of thing. So my three were, I was interested in media communications, I was interested in healthcare, and I was interested in education. Okay, so my game plan was to network and talk to people. This is where the FANG comes in. Okay, you use your member database, you go to meetings, you ask everybody, who do you know that works in this sector? Who do you know that works in media and communications? And I find a woman that I went to college with. She happened to be the CFO of one of the businesses at CBS. I may have heard of CBS. Okay, so CBS. So I go off and I meet Michelle. I'll never forget this. I went off and met with her. And she was actually a year ahead of me at Lehigh. We sort of knew each other a little bit, but anyway, she had me come to her office. She was very generous with her time. I told her my background, and she told me, she said, like, listen, your background is awesome. Your skills are amazing, but we don't ever hire from outside. We promote from within. Now, again, this was 20 years ago. So the situation might be different now. And so don't take anything that I say as what it would be for you. But at that time, she said, like, listen, in my world, I don't want to bring at the level that you would need to come in at. I don't want to bring anybody in from outside. I would bring people from within. So don't want to burst your bubble. That might not be the same thing at Yahoo or NBC or, a cable company or whatever. It might not be the case there. But from what I know of the industry, we promote from within. And I said, okay, well, that's interesting. I did speak to a couple other people. And in my assessment, it was going to be, now, like, listen, if this was my passion, I'd figure out a way. But I was just sort of checking things out. It wasn't my passion. I had spoken to her about her career and what kind of work she did and what got her excited. And it wasn't my, and I thought, okay, it just wasn't my thing. Cross that off the list. Moving on. Next, healthcare. I went and I talked to people in healthcare. Same sort of thing. I tried to figure out how I would bring my skills and my experience and what sort of role and what sort of environment. Would it be a hospital? Would it be with a healthcare startup? Would it be with a pharmaceutical company? Like, I talked to people in lots of different industries. And to be honest with you, it just wasn't, again, it wasn't getting me excited. And I didn't have really the network. I wasn't making enough connections. I was having trouble getting the conversations because I just didn't have a strong network in that space. Again, if I was really excited, I would figure out a way for that to work, right? Join some trade associations, find some networking groups. For me, it didn't pan out. But when I started, then after I crossed that off the list, when I started having conversations with people about education, well, then that really lit my fire and I got excited. Okay. And within education, I looked in 3 different areas. I looked at educational technology. I looked at basically elementary, actually 4 areas, elementary education, public education. I looked at charter school education, and I looked at higher education. And I talked to people. I took interviews. I went and I told my story. I was trying things on. I was checking them out as much as they were checking me out. And when I went and had the interviews with educational technology companies, I was like, yuck, I didn't like it, right? I wanted something so different. I didn't like that at all. I did like the public school sort of thing. But that I knew that was going to be a short-term thing. That would only last for, for me, I was going to enjoy it for maybe 2-3 years. And then I was going to be like, okay, so what's next? And I didn't want to make this a move for, for 2 or 3 years. And then I also looked into charter schools. Charter schools were growing, networked with amazing, great story through the FANG, actually. Someone from the nonprofit SIG at the FANG introduced me to someone that worked for, I want to say, the March of Dimes. And the person from the March of Dimes introduced me to someone that worked at one of the large charter school networks in New York City. And I met her for coffee one day and I said, tell me and it's not like they had a position. They didn't have a position available, but she liked me. And we had a second coffee. And then the next thing you know, I'm coming in, I'm meeting with HR people, I'm meeting a whole bunch of people, including the head of the charter school network. And when I walk out, they've created a position for me and a job, and given me a job offer. Okay, so that's opportunity number one. It was exciting. I really liked it. So that was happening. And at the same time, I was also looking at higher education. Higher education was, again, I had sat on boards. I took the time to meet people that worked in higher education to find out, how does my resume look? How do I do a search? What does it mean on your website when it's asked, the position is graded, grade 15? Like, what does that mean? Things like that. And I got to know people in higher education. And then I was able to expand my search. So what ended up happening was I was looking at charter schools and I was looking at higher education. And at the end of the day, 2 job offers. And I decided to go to Columbia. Okay, that's the whole story. But the launch plan is figuring out where you focus. It's not just like anything out there, because then you're just shooting darts. Okay, you have to be purposeful and intentional. So where are you trying to pivot? You may know what that sector is. It doesn't it doesn't have to be you're creating a pivot to another sector. It could be, I want to pivot, I want to stay in my sector, but I want to pivot to a new role, a different part of the business. How do I do that? Okay, same strategy. Okay, and then once you have figured out that strategy, you need to be able to tell your story. What's been your background? What's been your experience? What are your areas of expertise? Why are you passionate about this? Why are you doing this? This is my opinion, okay? You can't sort of do a pivot job search and then not really tell anybody. Okay, so in other words, you can't say, oh, I'm going to continue looking for a job in financial services, but on the side, I'm going to look for something in education, but not really talk about it. Because if you don't really talk about it, it's not going to happen. You have to be able to talk about it. You have to be able to tell people, okay? You have to be able to tell your story. You have to have all your materials ready. You have to have your resume, update your LinkedIn, and be able to, talk the talk. Like, why? Remember going and interviewing with, like, trying to make even if you make something up, I mean, I don't care, but you have to have a why. You have to be able to tell people why. And then once you know your skills and you have some focus and you're able to tell your story, you start your search. Okay, you use all your resources that are available. You can't be shy. You reach out to all of your former coworkers, bosses, career offices, social contacts, FANG members, everybody in your life. You're telling what you're up to. Even if you're looking at 3 different things, it's fine. Tell them what you're doing, and you're open to new opportunities. Somebody says to you, hey, I always thought of you as XYZ. Why don't you check that out? Oh, that's an interesting idea. You treat everyone that gives you input or is willing to make introductions as like eternally grateful. and you treat each and every opportunity like they're huge. Okay, you get an interview. I had an interview with that educational technology company, and I knew I knew before I went on the interview that it wasn't for me, but I still took the interview because you get to practice. You get to practice. Talk the talk. It gets me into in front of people. It puts me in an office setting. Did I like that sort of setting? Did I like those kinds of people? There are things to be learned, even if you know things aren't perfect. Okay, so treat every opportunity like they're huge. Keep an open mind. You never know. I might have gone in and I loved it. Who knows? Push yourself out of your comfort zone, and then you just network like crazy. Okay, you network like crazy, regardless of whether you want to stay in your current industry or you switch. You benefit from job leads, from potential opportunities. You have to be out there at home. At the end of the day, you can hide under the covers. But when you're out the rest of the day, you are positive. You have a smile on your head, on your face. You are, you are just enthusiastic, and you are just out there. So, you just then have to put a smile on your face and take a jump. And so I think for me, one of the biggest things was I have to actually be willing to say it out loud to people that I am focused in a new direction. People would say, like, why? Well, I don't think right now, like, you have to hide from that, particularly after the past, couple of years that we've had. You don't have to hide. You don't have to hide from your company closed, or your division, was, or your group was downsized, or your industry imploded. You just don't have to hide from that. 2 sentences, and then you move on. That's it. You just say what you have to say and why you are moving forward. Okay. So I just want to stop right there, and see, Matt, if you can help me out, if there's any.
Sharon, actually, I have a question, which was, when you do a career pivot, how important is it to get a mentor or a cheerleader for yourself? Or, is just a, strong network or networking skills, is that sufficient to do a pivot?
I think that you take any and all available resources that are out there, for you. Okay. So if you have somebody in your life that, or if you meet somebody along the way that would be a good mentor or cheerleader for you, I think I think you take it and you do it. I don't think everybody has that. I had family members saying, rah, rah, go team, I know you can do it, which is always, certainly you want to have people in your corner. But I don't think you have to have that to be successful. Does that answer your question, Matt?
Yes, thank you.
Sharon, how receptive or supportive was your family in regard to these various changes that you were making throughout your career?
Well, that's a really good question, Jerry. Okay, so can I just say that, okay, I was already at Deutsche Bank when I got married. When I left Deutsche Bank, my husband says, what are you doing going to some other large organization? You know that the politics will, eat you up and you'll hate that. Why are you doing that? You should have your own business. I was like, nah, I don't know, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. I always saw myself, I judged myself based on the title. Okay. And that was important to me. And then it was only after years of realizing that title didn't really matter. And in fact, title in higher education doesn't translate to higher title in the rest of the business world. They have these wonky titles. And I was like, what? I'm not a vice president. Like, excuse me? Well, apparently there's like 3 vice presidents in the whole university. There's the president, there's 3 vice presidents, and then everybody else is an associate vice president. And I couldn't believe when I got my job, I was like, really, that's the title? That sounds really lousy. But I had to get over myself. Like I had to just get over, and the more and more I sort of got over myself, I realized, you know what? Title and money doesn't equate to happiness. And then I started listening to my husband, who then had been around for a little while longer, saying, you really should have your own business. So I hadn't really thought about that. And so I really got into thinking about that and talking to people about what that was like, and sort of putting together all the safety measures and deciding whether I could really do that. And so to answer your question, very supportive. I do think it is harder if you have people around you that aren't on board. Because to Matt's point, you do need people to lift you up and to tell you it's going to be okay, and to encourage you and support you along the way. So I do think that part is imperative. Okay, so after taking those steps to prepare, now you've got to get your head in the game. Now you really need to execute, and how do you do that? Okay, on every single opportunity, you are prepared. You are prepared. What does that mean? Is when you are looking at a job posting, a job lead, you can't leave it up to other people to figure out how you could fit into it. It's your job to articulate how you fit into a role in another sector. So said another way, you need to map your qualities and your experiences to their needs. So job description, requirements, qualities, qualifications, et cetera, you go through it with a fine-tooth comb and you make sure that you can identify, at least on 80%, that you can tell a story of something that you've done in your career that you can meet those requirements. You have relevant, recent, tangible examples of results on hand. You can provide specific skills and attributes. And I want to tell you that when I went to, I was at Columbia, and I've been working in a central function, and there was an opportunity in the law school. And the law school job description had a lot of crazy, it was an education lingo. And and the HR people in that area said, come on, you don't have the experience for this. And I said, well, actually I do. And what I did was I prepared a matrix, which was left-hand side, their requirements, right-hand side, how I met those requirements. And I had to explain how I did those things in my world. And then in fact, I was better than an internal candidate because I offered fresh perspective. Okay, so it's not up to hiring manager or company or industry to figure you out. Your job is to lay out that roadmap for them. Okay, so number one, you need to be prepared. Number two, you're going to use your natural advantages. If you're somebody that's been out in the world and you have a longer work history, you have experience with up economies and down economies. Okay, so you've maybe worked with growing companies or contracting companies. You have a proven track record. You have a network. You use anything and everything that you have in your life or in your past as your advantage. Okay, so whether it's the FANG or college networks or family or somebody that your Aunt Judy knows in California that she thinks that you should talk to, you jump on it. You jump on everything. Okay. I think you have to be prepared to overcome objectives. objections, and you have to sometimes adjust your expectations. Okay, so I told you the title thing. Like, I was a managing director. How was I going to go be an associate vice president? Like, really? That sounded really weird to me. But the reality is that titles didn't matter. Okay, that was a title for their, for their salary system. The title that really mattered to me was that I was CFO and chief of staff for the student administrative services for the university. I was the dean of student affairs and administration. My functional title meant much more to me than my corporate title, and so some of those things were like, I just had to get over it and not be stuck in my pride of what it is that I needed. But I think that you do need to have conversations with people about salary ranges so that you're not surprised. Have those early so that you're not spending time on something that's just not going to meet your needs. Okay. And then my final point on this, in terms of getting your head into the game, is that, as I sort of mentioned it before, is that a career pivot is just not a regular job search. You don't have the experience. You're not an insider. And so that means that you have to do more. Okay, you have to help recruiters and employers by telling a coherent story. Okay, how do you do that? Is in your cover letter or in every conversation. You have to be able to have your pitch and have it be coherent. Okay, you're not going to just send out, your financial services resume to a consumer products company. Okay? You have to tell them why, what interests you, what skills and experience bring you to submitting an application, what gets you, what makes you excited. I remember there being a role, I forget, it was a nonprofit. It was an association about, what was it? Sorry, my phone is ringing. Anyway, whatever, was it gun violence or something? They were looking for somebody to head up a nonprofit or whatever. And, as I'm writing the cover letter, like, you want to be able to connect personally with the mission. And if I can't connect with the mission, I have no business even having a conversation. Like, I don't want to just have a job. Remember, I'm doing this whole pivot because I want to connect in a meaningful way with the people and the mission and what I'm doing, and that I'm adding value. So if you can't convince yourself and write a cover letter that says why it is that you're interested in such and such a role, then you have no business actually writing, applying for that position. Okay, so you need to be able to say, well, why are you interested in a move into education? Well, I sat on a board, or I did something in my life and it's always interested in me. My family member was afflicted by, a certain disease. And so I'm passionate about research in that space, or I have spent time, or you have to have a coherent story about why you're pivoting. I don't think it has to be like, it just has to be genuine, and it doesn't have to be a long diatribe. It can just be sort of a simple thing. For me, I had a good fortune to going to a good college. I always wanted to give back. It taught me a lot of skills that I didn't have previously. So I sat on the board. From that, I learned a lot about the operations of a college institution. And, at this point, I'm looking for something different where I can pair my expertise in operations, process, and strategy in the educational sector. My husband's a teacher, my parents are teachers, we're an educational family. And so this is where I belong. Okay, very good. So be prepared to answer questions about why you're pivoting, tell your coherent story, and then have that in your cover letter. Your resume might look different too. You know, the top part of your, resume in terms of what it is that you're looking for. I went so far as to have somebody in the sector that I was focusing on look at my resume and give me criticism. How does this resonate with somebody in your industry? My financial services resume just had too much, I mean, although great accomplishments, it was so technical in nature. No one in education really knew what I was saying. So I had to tailor it to my audience. Okay. And in fact, bucking conventional wisdom, I had a lot of leadership experience that I brought up in my resume, and I moved my professional experience down. So usually when you're doing a resume, you start with, your most recent jobs, your professional experience, and then your education, and then your volunteer experience. I actually moved my volunteer experience up because that's what I wanted people to see. I wanted people to see that I had already done work, although it was volunteer, in the educational space. Okay, so you have to be able to prepare your, be able to share your story in a meaningful way.
Sharon,
Yes.
so when you got to the negotiation stage, or how, either way, how rigid or how flexible were you, or would you advise someone who was thinking about that to be with respect to salary requirement?
Well, I would always, and that was 10 years ago. So that's a different time than now. But I don't think you should, I think you need to think about what is it that you really need? What is it that you really need? And what will make you happy? So I was not going to make what I made in, I did take a step back on my salary, but for me, there were some other benefits to that. And I had to consider some of those other benefits. Number one is I could walk to my job. I could walk there. Literally, I could walk there. That was a big benefit. There were amazing benefits for my family in terms of tuition assistance and et cetera, et cetera. There were things that really added value, I think, to the opportunity for me. So I had to think really hard about that. But that didn't mean that I cowered away from asking for more, because I think that if you don't ask for more right then and there, you sort of lose your opportunity. So you always ask for more, and there's lots of ways to get more. There's more salary, there's more flexibility, there's more something that you want. I don't know. It's something different to everybody. Maybe you want to work from home 3 days, a week, or I want to work from home. I mean, that has value to it. You've just gained, I don't know, the folks that commute into Manhattan, I mean, that's 2-3 hours a day. So if you could recapture 2-3 hours a day and work from home, I don't know if the same thing in Chicago, but if that has value to it, doesn't it? Or I thought it did. So I was willing to make some changes there, but I think that's a very personal analysis, but definitely one that you should raise with a prospect. I want to check out the chat here, see what's going.
Hi, Sharon. Justin here. Good morning. While you're checking a chat,
Hi.
and dovetailing off of the pivot to search, and that we've increasingly become a consumer or a buyer's journey world, as opposed to sell. How much do you see that in folks that are out there looking for that next position, in that instead of trying to sell yourself, you create yourself to be bought.
Well, I do see that there are companies that are having trouble recruiting talent in some areas. And so that makes you, you and me, the seller,
The talent pool shrinks.
more in demand, more in demand.
Right.
And I can say is that I think maybe it's a bit of a personality thing, but I never really felt comfortable. I still think naturally that when you're in a job interview situation, you're in a situation where you sort of need to sell. They don't know you. You have to sell yourself.
Mhm.
You have to sell yourself. But I think that in the back of your mind, there can always be but I don't really, do I really need this? And if I don't really need this, then I'm just going to take this opportunity for what it's worth. So let me just explain that a little bit better.
Mhm.
I think I had mentioned that I did an interview with a educational startup company. And of course, I'm going to go in and I'm going to go through the interview and I'm going to answer all the questions. And I'm taking the opportunity for good practice. And I'm going to put my best foot forward, and I'm going to sell myself because I'm the interviewee, right? I mean, that's what I need to do. But in the back of my mind, I'm saying, I don't really need this. I don't really need this. Who cares? Let's see how far I can push the envelope and what sort of crazy things I can throw out there. And because I really don't care, right? But I don't think in any case, I give a good impression of myself if I really put that feeling out there. I think, and my reputation is, I don't want to damage my reputation. So I think you always need to be respectful. I think you always need to be kind. I think you always need to sell, sort of soft sell yourself. But to cast myself as the, convince me, I don't know, just feels a little less professional to me. What do you think?
I think you're correct in the interview stage that yes, it's on the applicant to sell themselves. I was thinking more on the pre-interview stage of positioning yourself. And the analogy is, 15, 20 years ago, when we wanted to buy a television, we went to the local appliance store and the guy that was working there sold us a television. Today, we go to the Google and choose the television that we want to buy, and we buy it.
Yep.
But to that point, you have to position yourself to be seen. Hello, I'm over here. Hi, as opposed to when you're in the chair and being interviewed. Yeah, you got to sell yourself. You got to be convincing. You got to tell your story. You got to back it up. I get that.
Yeah, I do. And Justin, to your point, listen, companies are so hungry. They're really looking for good talent. They're reaching out. So, so what makes you so great? Or I think said in a nice way, what makes you so great? Or to a recruiter, why do you think this company is so good? What makes you special? What makes you I think you can do that in a nice way to say, why you versus somebody else, for sure. Thanks for that. I had promised at the very beginning that I would put into the chat my info. So my email, srichter@focalpointcoaching.com. my LinkedIn, you're welcome to connect with me. And something that I like to offer people when I come and give these talks is to just, as you're sort of thinking, the downside on these sorts of things is I don't get to hear everybody's personal story. So I like to hear these stories, and one of the reasons I do this in the FANG is because you heard me mention the FANG a number of times. Lots of great things. I met people, I mined databases. There were people from the FANG that had no reason to help me, but they did. And in fact, even more so than people that were in my network that I thought were going to help me. So the people in the FANG, you may not know them, but they want to give. And I want to give because other people gave to me. And so one of the ways I give is I come and I give these talks, but I also give because I coach people now, is that I give by offering a coaching session. So you can follow my Calendly link that I put in the chat, set up time so that I can hear your story. And if I can offer any assistance or input on your strategy as you move forward, you're welcome to set up time with me. And then the last thing that I would just like to offer, which is kind of cool, I also just put in the chat, is as a coach, I work with people that are trying to get clarity, people that are trying to develop their strategy. And I mentioned at the very beginning, one of the things that you have to figure out are what are your skills and what are your gaps. And some people know what those are, and other people struggle to actually articulate them. So I recently developed a sort of a scorecard. It's just a questionnaire. It gives you a report and sort of grades you on leadership and communication and things like that. And so I put the link in the chat. You're welcome to fill that out, see what it tells you. If it gives you any insight on you and your strategy for moving forward, then I'm happy to offer that to you. And when you get the report, if you want to talk, about it, I'm happy to do that as well. But my wish for all of you is that there's one or two nuggets or inspiration in this that helps you move forward, because it was people at the FANG that helped me do the same at various points. So can I just open it up? Jerry, I'm just looking at the time. We have time just for people to sort of talk about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the thing that resonated with me was really your starting point, the 3 Ps, and in particularly purpose, because that's what kickstarted my sort of career move after, being a CFO, et cetera. But more particularly with my experience that I was with Northwest Industries, a major conglomerate in the Chicago area, had responsibility for managing huge amounts of revolving credit debt. And this was at a time when the PC, the personal computer, was just coming into vogue, and there were tools available that were just going to blow me away, tools that had always existed. They were mathematical tools like linear programming, like Monte Carlo simulation, like Bayesian inference, tools that would facilitate decision making. And I utilized those kinds of tools in carrying out my responsibility, and that really floated my boat. And when I decided to become a consultant, when I had sort of left the corporate world, it was my desire to bring knowledge of the ability to utilize those kinds of tools in any decision-making situation. So that's why I now offer my services as helping the C-suite make better and more informed decisions. And I utilize mathematical tools to bring that about. So you're right on when you talked about purpose, because as I look back, that's the thing that when I was in the work area in the corporate world. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, for sharing that. I mean, I think yeah, I just kept on going for bigger and bigger titles and bigger roles, and that, that was all fine until it wasn't enough. And finding your purpose and having a goal or some place to go, it gives you direction. Otherwise you're just sort of out there wafting in the wind. No, I'm not saying that. I mean, right, there's lots of good things to do out there, but imagine how it feels when it's really in line with your goals and your vision and your own personal mission. And it's all very personal, right? I think that's also a piece, is that I had to let go of this crazy notion that I was being judged, because at the end of the day, the only judge is me. The only judge of, happiness and prosperity and success is me. So I had to sort of let go of some things that I had in my head. And so I hope that that resonates with some of you.
Other quick stories? Mary, go ahead.
Well, I would like to go back to Justin's comment or question about marketing and that. And I think, Justin, we need to keep in mind that everybody looks at your LinkedIn profile now before they talk to you. So in a way, you do have to sell yourself before you have that first conversation. And, I know Sharon talked about this a little bit, but once you figure out what your purpose is and where you're going, you got to do that in your LinkedIn profile. And I know that because I'm still struggling with it.
Yeah, I know that's a really good point. Is I wanted to pivot, but I was a little afraid to actually put it on my LinkedIn page.
The thing that there's a question of, should your LinkedIn profile be continuously updated to meet specific situations? Like to me, you have many resumes, because you have you have resumes that will be adapted to meet specific job descriptions. As you become aware of an opportunity, you want to tailor your resume to indicate and to demonstrate that you have the qualifications and the experience to meet that job. But do you change your LinkedIn profile to reflect that? I don't think so. But get the conventional wisdom of the group.
I've actually started a master resume that is exhaustive. It's almost 20 pages long. No one's going to read that. When the opportunity arises that catches my attention, I will craft the resume that's 2 pages.
Right.
For that position.
So you have a resume template that is 20 pages long, and then you
got everything in it. Kitchen sink.
Yeah. You pull and you cut and paste. That's what you do.
And refine and focus, to Sharon's point, highlight the skills and experiences that you have that will capture the imagination.
Yeah. How about you, John?
I just wanted to echo again, Sharon, the valuable suggestion that you gave us again about the matrix or the side by side, as I've been, helping people over the years with their job searches through Holy Family here. Bringing that, introducing that either, along by sending it, or more importantly, bringing it along to that interview and leaving it as a leave behind is an extremely powerful thing and will set you apart from other people. I mean, marketing people can leave a portfolio. Yeah. We can leave, our star stories as enumerated in that side by side, our success stories and That's our right. experiences when pivoting. I've pivoted in my career twice. And again, I can't say enough about how important it is to have maybe a 2 or 3 pager like that with your star stories, and then you can pare that down to a 1 page with the job description or a 2 page with the job description.
Yeah.
So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you're applying to a position and target in resumes, maybe 5 or 6 different ones I don't know. Again, I do share though with the LinkedIn, do you go back and make your LinkedIn as generic as possible? I like the idea where you threw out the leadership things that you pulled up to the top. At least you probably did that in your LinkedIn as well.
That's right. I
In
did.
order, to cast your lot and make that transition. And very brave of you. So thank you
Yeah.
again.
No,
Fantastic.
you're welcome. And John, yeah, I never left my matrix behind, but that's a great idea. And I think that would clearly distinguish you from other candidates, right? You want to be memorable. But I think that, yeah, I mean, I prepared it for my own purposes, right? So that I could write a really good cover letter. And maybe I could figure out which points I need to highlight in my resume. And wholly agree. Like I think I had 3 main resumes, and then I would tweak off those 3. And I can't remember what the versions were. But Justin, that 20 pages is amazing. I think my resume actually ended up being. I know they say don't go over 2 pages, but I'm pretty sure mine did. I think I went into my third page. But then I did realize that some organizations that was just too much. And the things that I thought were really important of the impact that they didn't even know what that meant. They didn't, some of those things. So anyway, I could, pare that down, but I loved your idea about creating, a marketing piece that you could leave behind. I think that's definitely something that would be distinguish you from other candidates.
Mike, did I see something in the chat where were you pivoting from the CFO to the CEO side? Is that what I heard from you? Mike, yeah, that's you. Mike Stolatano.
No, I've been in the supply chain, transport, logistic. I find it very interesting. I really like the matrix idea. I think that's, I find it difficult even to pivot around industries, staying in the same role, but moving within industries. It's equally challenging, I would think. But because so many of the things we do, the skills we have as CPAs, as accountants, as finance people, they're transferable, right? I mean, we
Absolutely.
have. So no, I wasn't looking for the CEO role. I'm in transition now. My goal is to land another CFO role. But the challenge, and I think that what you've shared, Sharon's today, could help in the transition between industries as well. I really like that matrix idea. I think that could be very helpful.
I think that you can also share it with recruiters. As I said, I was, if there are other opportunities internally at organizations that you might be associated with, and like maybe you look like an unconventional candidate. As I said, I was sitting at Columbia and the law school said, like, what do you have? Like, why, I don't think you have what what is needed. And I said, I beg to differ. Like, I put together this matrix, which lists out your requirements and what I've done in my career. Some of those things are even here at Columbia. Some are elsewhere. You want X and I did Y. So I think that those sorts of things make an impression on people. And there's lots of different ways to use that.
I think there is a takeaway here in terms of while your purpose, Sharon, was to, in terms of pivoting, to point out that you met the requirements and your matrix essentially demonstrated and supported that. I think we're all of those that are in transition at the moment and are not necessarily pivoting, can do the same thing with respect to how their career accomplishments support their ability to handle the requirements of the job. And so I think this matrix idea turns out to be a very valuable piece as a leave
Yeah.
behind in any interviewing situation.
I think that's right. And I also think it helps you identify where you have gaps. And then you can develop a strategy to articulate how you would go about closing those gaps. And just tackle those straight on, right? You don't want to hide from it. But yes, I see that you're looking for someone that has XYZ. And I just want to say up front, I have all these other things, but I don't have that. But I have done these sorts of things in the past, or I'm going to go to a conference and get trained up, or I'm going to sign up for a class, or just show motivation to be willing to close the gap. Because at the end of the day, right, the hiring managed people, well, if they're doing a good job with this, right, they're looking for, and I think back to like if anybody is familiar with the Carnegie Triangle, they're looking for skills and knowledge, right? That's what they can get through. That's what they can get through your resume and through your cover letter, skills and knowledge, right? Okay, but we know, you and I all know that that the most important thing is attitude. And that's what you bring to the, so you just need to get enough to get the conversation. If you get the conversation, then you can get, and show the synergies and the personalities and the gel and the team and all, all those other things. If you get the conversation, then you can probably get them over the hump. Lamar?
I have a very quick question. I'm sorry to be late. I was at another meeting and I overscheduled today. And I'm glad you're recording this because I'm looking forward to getting it and seeing what I missed. But one of the things, whether you're making a career pivot or making a career change or just staying in the same thing, I am finding right now one problem that exists. And I'm sorry, I'm preaching, I don't mean to be, but keep your network in the loop. Okay, treat introductions as well, first of all, you're looking for introductions, but keep the referral sources up to date. I probably make five or more introductions a week, and fewer than 20% keep me in the loop, even though I asked them to keep me in the loop. So after you've made that connection, go back to the person that made the introduction, give them an update. And you know what? They may have some other contacts for you. Please keep your network up to date. It will truly differentiate.
That's a really good point. And if you don't, you should keep a list of all the people that you talk to and who told you to talk to the next person, to talk to the next person, to talk to the next person, because you do want to be able to do that. And at the end, you want to be able to go back to everybody and let them all know where you landed or, what happened, and thank them profusely and that sort of thing. And I guess I would also say is that this isn't just like a one-way street. If anybody has heard, givers gain. So when you're having a conversation with someone, of course you want them to introduce you to people, but what can you do for them? Also.
Right.
Two-way street, because people will feel better about the interaction if there's something that you can do for them as well. And then that pays itself back, tenfold.